They're schemers. Schemers trying to control their little worlds. I'm not a schemer. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. And here we go.
Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well on this stupendous Sunday. That's it, baby. It's Sunday, which should be the day of rest. You're looking absolutely amazing, I must add. And I'm going to get straight into the meat and potatoes because it's Sunday, and I'm sure that you have got better things to do. But what is this video about? Now, somebody reached out to me, and look, like with everything, we have to be careful how much trust we put into certain things. So I can never be 100% sure that the person who reaches out to me and says that they are a certain person are indeed a certain person. And if we, yeah. 100%, am I 100% certain? Of course not. I can't be 100% certain, like I can't be 100% certain that Bryan Kohberger did this crime. But what I am 100% certain is that somebody reached out and claimed to be a friend of Bryan Kohberger's, and they have a story to tell. And not only that, but I feel that as we make our way through this story, by the end of it, one of two things is clear, and that is either someone has very cleverly followed this case, even the kind of the smaller details, and the way that they tell the story is also to make you believe that they've not followed the case close enough to have utilised the case to say what they're saying. That'll make sense as we progress through. But yeah, this is somebody who claims that they know Bryan, they've spent time with Bryan, and they have a specific story to tell that I think you'll find interesting. So we get into it, and then in the comments you can tell me whether you think that this person is indeed a genuine friend of Bryan's or not. I know the trolls certainly will, but let's get into it. I'm going to show it on notes, but it's only because it helps me to see it. You probably not so much. If you want to pause the screen and go and grab yourself a magnifying glass, you can of course do that. I don't know whether that screen's better for you or that one. Probably not that one. We'll come off that one. So look, it says, "Greetings, Sir Harsh. I'm writing this from a temporary email due to wanting to keep myself unknown due to the negative feelings of the public towards my friend Bryan. I chose to contact you because you've been a person who has been humane towards him and have kept an open mind just as I have, and I believe you will continue to do so. A bit of backstory on me. I can't go into much detail in order to keep my anonymity due to having family that depend on me, and I am a medical professional, which I'm sure you are aware takes over 10 years of collegial slavery, to say the least. Haha. Due to it seems that anyone who has anything humane to say about Bryan, they classify as a monster, and you know that trolls and have done damage to people who they don't agree with and ruin their reputations that have affected their professions. However, I digress. I was diagnosed as a psychopath at age 7. And as we move through, this will make a little bit more sense. And I wasn't allowed to attend public education due to an incident. I can't go into detail for obvious reasons. Thus, my brother and I had psychologists, psychiatrists, behaviour therapists, etc., that basically were our parents from ages 7 to 18. We were able to complete grade 12 at the age of 15, thus we didn't really have friends due to our circumstances. After the military, this is relevant due to this was a way Bryan and I connected. I continued my path into the medical profession, which of course required furthering my education via university. Bryan and I were both classmates, however, our paths crossed at the same campus randomly. Right, he was reading a Sherlock Holmes book, and I am a die-hard Sherlock Holmes follower. So naturally, I approached him and created a bit of small talk while we ate. I sat next to him, and I could notice that he felt a bit uncomfortable. I didn't make anything of it due to I am 6'3", 260 pounds, and muscular, which normally intimidated people, especially men. The whole alpha beta nonsense comes into play, I'm sure. Plus, I did take up a lot of space. So I asked him if it was okay if I sat with him. As I explained, I did not know anyone here and spoke about why I was here. Bryan became intrigued, which I could see, when I mentioned I was a chem major nerd. Maybe he was shocked and a bit happy that even someone like myself, who I'm sure people thought I was a gym rat or meathead, etc., negative connotations of that nature. That's when he brought up his studies. So we had a common ground of a sort even more. He had questions about my work in organic, inorganic biochemistry, and also about my nutrition and working out. I also had questions about his field of work, studying forensics, as I had considered that path and can still be involved in that area due to my background. To me, I didn't necessarily see him as awkward, but maybe a little reserved and not very interested in what most students were in regards to drinking, partying, bars, etc. It was interesting. When I looked at him, I saw a somewhat of a shy, nerdy brainiac type of individual that was harmless. In my mind, I thought I could easily befriend him, hang out, and kill him without no one really noticing. Obviously, that was just a bit of my morbid curiosity side. In reality, I had no intention and never did of harming Bryan. So he sat there a while. He then closed the Sherlock Holmes book, and I told him I had read The Speckled Banner over 50 times. And it was... I'm trying to read this, and I don't even have my glasses on. I wonder why I'm struggling. I don't even know where my glasses are. I'm just going to have to power through 50 times, and it was one of my favourites. He then pulled out a forensic book, and I asked him a few things, and he actually engaged with me about it, and we talked for over an hour. I could see that his demeanour had changed, and he was much more relaxed, receptive, and engaging in his own way. He isn't a person that has many expressions, and definitely not an animated person by any means. However, when he spoke about topics that you could see he enjoyed and was passionate about, he would have this sort of a smile, happy expression, and his eyes would somewhat light up. That's as much as I can give you into the type of person I engaged with during my friendship with Bryan. And I still keep in touch with him, his parents, and I still will be sending him financial support books, letters, and a Bible until the day that if he actually did do it, he describes how he did it to the point it leaves no doubt that he is guilty. I'm sure part of my intrigue with Bryan is my own interest in all of this due to my psychopathy, etc. Only God truly knows. I'm not going to say we were best friends and talked every day on the phone and had sleepovers. We had a friendship in our own unique way. As we sat there, I pulled out a variety of foods I had with me, and he noticed much of it was Italian food. I don't know if anyone has mentioned this, but Bryan is of Italian descent. So that was another big thing we had in common. And for those of you who don't know, this was something that was mentioned by a neighbour of Bryan's regarding Bryan putting his DNA onto a DNA website because he was interested in finding out about his Italian heritage. So if you didn't know, now you do. I offered him at least try a few, and I could see that he wanted to say yes. However, he felt awkward and hesitant. I could see by his body language, so I grabbed a paper plate from a few students having lunch nearby and made the choice for him. He mentioned that he was experimenting with certain diets, but then I mentioned I had this stuff overnighted from my aunt in Sicily. He smiled and did actually try the foods, including the cheeses. After after another hour, I mentioned that I had to go to a lecture, so I gave him a business card I had. Have my own business still, and told him that if he wanted to get together and talk about forensics, physics, chemistry, or even Sherlock Holmes, like, he could text me or email me. He took it, placed it in his fanny pack, I think that's what it's called, and I could see him smile, and he said, "Sure, thanks." And he then informed me that he was Bryan, and I told him my name and proceeded to shake his hand. He was a bit caught off guard by that, but shook my hand. A few days later, around lunchtime, I was around the same area and I received this text from a number, not on my contact list. However, I had an inclination that it was Bryan, as I rarely give my number out. He texted me asking if I was around, which I think he had seen me, and that's when he sent me the text. And I said, yeah. So we met up, and he had some food he made and asked me to have some. So I did. It wasn't my style of foods, as I'm a huge carnivore and Italian cuisine type of person. However, I did have some due to the gesture and effort he had made. I could see that he was a bit anxious and excited for me to try his food. And when I did, it was actually really good. When I let him know, I could see a sigh of relief and half a smile. I could imagine him spending days making those food, getting it right so that we could hang out and I could try them. So we proceeded to talk about our assignments and we exchanged ideas and observations about each other's assignments. I will say this, Bryan isn't a huge talker, so a lot of our conversation, I did a lot of the talking. And as we hung out more and more, he opened up, relaxed, and became more engaged. I don't know how it came up, but his parents came up in a conversation and I could see that he's very close with his parents and loves them very much. Everyone he spoke about them, he'd always have this slight smile and look of relief, if that makes sense. I remember this part where a few girls came over. We were talking about forensics, and he clamped up almost immediately and had this look of extreme nervousness and fear. It looked like to me. Once I noticed that, I took over the conversation and led it so that Bryan could maybe ease up once he saw that they were not going to bite. Long story short, I got the number of the girl I liked, and Bryan did not say a word really. He was very nervous, and they could see that. Once they left, I asked him what he thought of her, and he said she was very pretty. But then he said that he wasn't able to date until he finished his studies and had secured long-term employment so that he wouldn't get distracted and fail. Then tried to joke with him a bit, and he laughed a bit, but then got serious and said that females were a distraction. I couldn't agree with that, and I didn't combat the conversation about it, and we continued speaking about school topics. This was a few of our first interactions when we first met, and they continued that way until we went our separate ways. Although we would meet again after a few times, as I had ended up in Boise, Idaho for about a year, but I never had any negative incidents with Bryan, and our friendship was normal, I believe. One thing we both hated was talking on the phone, so when we talked or checked in to say, how's it going, it was usually via text message. This is why I'm considering giving a few interviews about how Bryan was as a friend. Never did I see him inflict pain on anyone. In fact, he had reached out to me about this female that showed interest in him, and he enjoyed her company. However, he did not have romantic feelings for her and asked how I could convey that to her. That right there showed me that he was actually a caring person from my experience with him, which is why I still believe that Bryan took the plea deal to avoid being shot to death, and I will continue to support him financially wherever he is. Fortunately, I do very well financially, therefore I also provide further assistance if he asks. I would like to do at least one interview anonymously to protect my profession and refute all of those speculations out there of Bryan being some evil, cold, uncaring monster. So there you go. That is that. And again, did this person take all of this time to do a story that was fantasy? Who knows? And I'm saying that as respectfully as possible, because for me to sit here after not meeting this person, not knowing this person, know nothing about them, for me to sit here and say, oh, 100% this is who they say they are, would be wrong of me. But they've taken a lot of time, and some of the things that they speak about, it rings like it could be true to me. But I'd like to get your thoughts and feelings. I did get permission to share this with you guys, and there is a potential that we could further this along. If you're interested, let me know and I'll see what I can do. But yeah, that's it. Go and enjoy the rest of your Sunday now, after you've commented and smashed like, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe and all that jazz. Let's see what next week brings us, shall we? Love you all. Mwah.